So yeah.
All right.
The first dude up.
We're going to talk about Chase the Traveler.
Chase is Torabera.
Yeah. Do you know it's never been written anywhere in katakana, right? You know that, right?
Yeah. But
Okay.
that's how I'll read it. Torabera-san. Chase senpai.
But yeah, Chase is I guess we'll talk about who he is real quick so they know. Chase is a Japan vlogger that's lived in Japan for over 3 decades, so 30 plus years.
Oh, was it that long?
Yeah. And so he talks about his experiences in Japan. He's had ups and downs. He's been through a lot of things. He's obviously anywhere you live for 30 years, you're going to go through pretty much every aspect of life.
Yeah.
When it's, there's no way of escaping it. So he went there. I don't know if he went there as an English teacher. I believe he did, but he's been an English teacher for a while. He's done other things in Japan as well, other enterprises. He mentioned for a while he had his own company. It might have been an English lessons company, but he's definitely an interesting Japan vlogger.
Right.
He does his walks around.
Yeah.
Wherever he is, if he's in Tokyo or Osaka or wherever, he walks around. So as he's telling you his stories, you get, a nice view of, urban Japan.
Oh, that's the thing I like about his video. I see like the background. It doesn't have to be all flashy or like, I don't know, Shibuya-y, Shinjuku-y.
No,
just a regular
everyday Japan.
Machi.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And he's I think I don't know how old he is. I'd say he's might be a little bit older than us. Might be in his 50s or late 40s. Not sure. But you can tell by the way he tells his stories and the topics he chooses. You can tell that he's been there. He's seasoned and he's been there a long time. And he's really also I think all of them are inquisitive to certain degrees, right? But I think the stories that he tells, you can tell he's actually spoken to a lot of Japanese people,
right? And
has had relationships which he talks about too. So it's pretty interesting. Out of the 3 J vloggers that we're going to talk about, I found him probably the most interesting to listen to,
right? And
the least aggravating. I can't say I was aggravated by anything he talked about. It was the voice of experience. Is Chase the Traveler. That's what I would characterize him as.
Torabera-san. Yeah. Also, he talks about not just the cultural aspect, but living there and getting houses, or like going like the kuyakusho stuff, the document stuff. All those little things that we didn't have to care about back then because you had an agent. Me, I didn't have to do any of that stuff. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And the dude was, I don't know, like his vibe is like, it's already like he's been through all of them, all of the things. And now, like, he's not mad.
He's transcended,
like,
dude.
Yeah, he's chill, man. He's chill. He just like talks about it as it was, it were.
Yeah.
So I thought that was pretty interesting too. And because like some dudes, they'll be like, oh, like, hey man, like just over excited.
Very excited, playing it up.
Yeah. I'm like, to me, like those videos are kind of tiring to watch, to be honest. But the Chase, no, you know what he mentioned about how his English changed after living there for, I don't know.
Oh yeah,
he said 3 decades. Yeah. Watched one of his videos and found out he's from New York.
Right.
I was like, yo, like from New York.
You're like the homie.
Yeah, I was surprised that he didn't even talk like somebody from New York. Not everybody has a thick accent just because they're from New York, but even he mentions that he don't sound like how he used to sound.
Right.
So I was like, yo, which is how I felt when I, came back from Japan after many years. And Korea too, because, living there, you use Japanglish, katakana, and waseigo. Like, even that term, I didn't even know that was a thing. You know why? I was thinking about how come I never heard the term waseego, because there's a Korean version of that. They have Konglish, and they have like Hangul 표기 영어. It's like 한국어 표기 ego, and I guess like the Korean version of waseego, maybe kanseego or something like that.
Right.
Almost the same as waseego, because they all came from Japan.
Right.
So, you know, after speaking all those like Konglish, Japanglish, waseego, katakana-ego, then you come back, you sound different.
Right.
But, you know, for example, what are the examples of waseego? Let's give a few examples. Sign pen.
Like your, what is
sign
it?
pen, just marker.
Oh, right.
Sign pen, right? Sign pen, you
Copy.
sign.
It's
Even
with
사라리만
copy,
is a waseego too. We just say office worker, right?
Right.
And
Instead of salaryman?
salaryman, 사라리만. And
Right.
you know what CA-상 is? CA-상, California, not California, but CA-상,
No. What is it?
flight attendant, cabin attendant. So they call
Oh,
them
I see.
CA-상. You know what's
it's
really
like,
interesting?
Oeru. Office lady.
Office lady, right? This one time, went to this place, and they had a like army jacket, and the tanning was like, oh, like there's a magic tape on the jacket, so you don't have to zip it up. So I was like, what's a magic tape?
Right.
You know what it is?
Tape.
Velcro.
Right.
Magic tape.
You're just making shit up, dude.
No,
Yeah.
magic tape.
Right,
So-
right. No, I'm not saying you are. I'm saying they are, dude.
Yeah,
They're
they
like,
are,
let's just
like,
put these English
100%,
words
yeah.
together. Yeah.
Shoe cream. The cream puffs.
Right.
Shoe cream, right?
Right, right.
So those things, waseego. Korean, same thing, because they were like directly imported from Japan
right.
back in the day. So everybody, sign pen, same thing. Not
Right.
CA, but they call it like stewardess, ski. Same
Right.
thing. And not magic tape. Magic tape is jig-jiggy, but that's not ego.
Jiggy.
Jig-jiggy, because that's the sound they make. Jig, 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 right?
Nice. Right, right.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Again, like learning Japanese is one thing. Then learning Japanglish, katakana ego, and wase-ego is another challenge, especially for gaijins.
Right.
You are always
know
good
what?
with it though. I was always
What's that?
surprised. Like you are always good with it, especially
Nah, man, I
katakana
care
ego.
about that. That stuff's interesting to me, dude.
Yeah. Even Asian Americans, they have a hard time speaking those. Wase-ego.
Right. But you know what it is? I think part of it is if you're someone who like genuinely enjoys talking to people and shooting the shit and asking them things about, like, you're just a curious person, they'll offer up all the info.
Right.
And especially
right,
the better, I'd say we'd have to, like, I guess, impress this upon people who may be listening who want to go to Japan. Like, the more Japanese you know, the better you speak,
Yeah.
the more you're gonna learn, the more
Yeah.
you're gonna integrate, the more you're gonna make friends, and they're
Exactly.
gonna like
Yeah.
hit you up and be like, "Yo, check it out! I found this thing. I think you're gonna like it."
Yeah.
I mean, that to me, that's natural,
Yeah.
and it's upsetting
Yeah.
when someone doesn't understand that. But like, it's not magic. It's just if you are someone who like pursues knowledge
Yeah.
and likes to communicate
Yeah.
and has genuine interest,
Yeah.
then you're gonna, you'll be blessed with people who are like
exactly.
the same because they want to know from you
But
just as
you
much.
have to do it first.
Yes.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
You can't be like, oh, I'm a gaijin, so like these Asians gonna come to me and be like, no, man,
No,
that's
not at
how it
all.
works. Be like, hey, man, I remember asking about Japanese. They have rendaku words because when there's two Japanese words, the second one gets like a ten, right? Like
Yeah.
sashimi joyu. And I'll ask like, why do they put the ten?
Right.
When they're like two kanji words, and they're like, that's rendaku. I was like, what's rendaku? And he's like, I don't know. That was Kengo. It's like, yo, wakanai desu yo ne. Yeah.
Well, that's that. You know what? That's true for everyone. Your own language, you know the rules, but you don't know why.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I remember,
That's how you know they're native, right?
Exactly. They couldn't tell you why. Like I think we probably have a bunch of those for English or Spanish or whatever.
Right.
I remember they'd make fun of me. They'd be like, well, you know grammatical stuff way more than we do because you know, and I'm like, well, because I'm studying it right now.
Right.
You guys learned how to speak since you were kids. You don't even need to know why.
Right.
You just know that it's right or it's wrong, you know?
And then there's Japanese street words and hybrid words. You know how when you put ru after anything, it just becomes a verb?
Right. Yeah.
Something ru, then it becomes a verb.
Right.
Like the funniest thing was to take a cab, taxi, right? Takushi. If you say takuru, it's like to take a taxi.
To take a taxi, right.
So I was like, that was always funny to me because people were like, 今日いやもう電車ないからみんなで let's collect money and タクって帰ろう。
Right.
So because ru becomes a tsu te, right?
Yeah.
タクって帰ろう。
Right.
So タクる and especially like new words like emotional. And if you put i, emoi, emotional, the emoi,
right.
it's like natsukashi or like emotional. Emoi, those like hybrid, like street words.
Right.
So many of them in Japan.
Yeah. And those are the first you're going to learn when you talk to people.
Yeah, that too. Yeah.
The other thing is, like, I realized you talk to people on the street or like, you know, young people or whatever, they have no idea why they're saying half the things they're saying. They're just like, that's what it means. And the other thing is people explaining to you why something is a certain way or why a word is a certain word. That's really hard. If somebody asks you why you say a certain thing in your own language, you'll find very quickly that depending on who you are, some people are good at like explaining grammar.
Right.
But I would say most people are not. So they would just say, that's just what we say.
Yeah,
that's how we say it.
Just like Japan's like this, so shut up. Just memorize it, Japanese style. Just just memorize it. That's how the way it is. Yeah, it's always funny talking to people like that. And again, depends on the friend group or like the fashion, age, everything is different. The way they talk, everything.
Right.
Everybody's
well,
different.
you become a different kind of character.
Yeah. Especially like gyaru, gyaru,
right?
How they talk, like I understand, you know, all those things. And if you talk to a hip hop dude, and you know, like it's not only hyo, man, hyo. It's never yo, it's yo in Japan, but it's still interesting. Like when I first went to Japan, I remember running into all these different neighborhoods and types of groups. I immediately realized, even though my kikitore wasn't 100%, still I could tell right away these guys talk different than this group, and this group talks different than that group. And then you know, you go to like these company meetings. It's like, yo, like people really talk like this. Is like super business Japanese.
Right. Yeah.
And that's really a different. You have to learn Japanese, then you have to learn that too, even as a Japanese person. After daigaku, once you get into a company, they teach you that business Japanese. They have a manual, like manual thick as a Bible too.
Yeah, and that's like, it's crazy hearing friends, like friends on the phone speaking, and and you're like, wow, dude, and like it's the verb conjugations, and dude, and also like, yo, people struggle with that. They're Japanese, and that's their language, and they struggle with it because it's very extra formal, and it's very specific to that environment, which is the professional work environment.
Yeah. Plus, you're not supposed to like do like double keigo. Let's say you're my boss and we're talking to this other company's shacho.
Right.
I'm not supposed to call you Felipe-san even though you're my boss when I talk to that person about you. Uchi no Felipe ga.
Right.
So like all these like komakai ass rules, man. man.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
that's
crazy.
why,
And again,
that's why a lot of people resort to being quiet, dude.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, like,
Especially at the
that's what it
meetings.
is. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just the easier way out. I can understand it.
Cringe Musume!
Right. So with Chase the Traveler, one thing I realized, and which we actually talked about a couple weeks ago, watching it, I thought, okay, like these J vloggers talk about pretty personal stuff sometimes, right?
Right.
And they also talk about things that are, you know, they're not all positive. I think maybe the J YouTubers is all about like, hey, look, this is a cool thing you can do, or oh, hey, I ate like this awesome thing, or like I went to this awesome place. And these people are more like we mentioned before, talking about everyday life and about just
Gaijin
nothing sensational, but more like everyday occurrences that you might experience. And you know, I'll read off some of the things that stood out to me when watching Chase the Traveler's videos. One of them was train rides. That was one topic, which is like that happens. Pretty often.
Yeah.
People are used to it, and they're just more concerned with getting to wherever they're going than like somebody just off themselves in front of this train I'm riding. It's just become kind of a norm, you know. And I think there's a couple of things we can talk about that. Depression in Tokyo is another subject matter he talked about. I mean, again, it's pretty common.
Yeah.
I've been, some of the most depressing times in my life were in Japan, you know? And again, it's not like a fun thing to talk about, you know?
Yeah.
Japan is not a place for those who don't fit in. Is one of the things he was talking about, which again, we talked about society and fitting in and not being the nail that sticks out and gets hit by the hammer. Who should come to Japan? And he lists certain types of people who would benefit from going to Japan and certain types of people who wouldn't, according to him, right? Japan makes you want to hide, is one of the things he was saying. As a foreigner, there's certain situations where you just wish you were invisible. There's certain things happen in the country, and then as a foreigner, you kind of have a repercussion from it, even though you had nothing to do with it. Political correctness in Japan is a must, is what he says, if you intend to live in Japan. And that one is very true.
Of political correctness, not the
well, of
US
course, the Japanese way. I mean, you know, it's not American political correctness. Yeah, no, American political correctness is completely a different thing, and it's there for a different reason.
Yeah.
And it's used in a different way.
Exactly.
Yeah. But in Japan, you know, being politically correct is saying what you are supposed to say in every different situation. And, you know, Chase addressed these topics very candidly, very openly. He gave, you know, some examples of his own personal experience with these topics. And it made me think, like, you know, sometimes when we do these videos, you know, I wonder, you know, how much information do I give in these videos that is personal?
Right.
You know, especially when it comes to, you know, relationships with people or, you know, certain things that I've gone through with someone who might end up watching this video at some point or not. You know, so far we've discussed professional relationships, you know, working in manga, working with editors, and that hasn't been really hard for me to talk about because, you know, I think half the things I tell, if they were to watch the video, they would, you know, laugh their ass off. Yeah. And same thing with artists. If artists watch the videos of me talking about, you know, like the hardships of the mangaka or like the hilarious stuff, you know, they would also find it funny. But then, you know, they talk about relationships, personal relationships. They talk about intimacy. They talk about things like that where for me, dating, you know, it's just, it made me, I guess, reflect a little bit on like the kind of stories that we talk about, you know, on our channel and, you know, how to navigate that as well. You know, I feel like sometimes if it's valuable information, of course, like anybody's personal experience,
right?
You know, regardless of the topic, is valuable because it comes from a person, and the more you watch their videos, which I've realized watching these three J-vlogger candidates, you know, you start understanding who this person is, and you start being able to read into like their scenarios and stuff.
Right.
And I think Chase is able to navigate different topics, some of them being harder than others, pretty well, you know, without like maybe putting himself in evidence or like maybe, well, I'm not sure. I mean, I don't know his
heated
personal
about
life,
stuff.
but
Again,
definitely doesn't get heated about things. He's very calm about,
things.
you know, even if it's topics that are like, you know, could
Super
be aggravating,
sensitive.
or sensitive as well. Like he's pretty good at doing that.
Right.
I mean, you know, I just started doing this. This is our channel's pretty new. We started this year.
Yeah.
So like I'm still feel like I'm still learning a lot, trying to gauge, but also
Like and subscribe.
yeah, to our viewers, you know, like we're interested, or I guess I'd say I'm interested. I don't know about you, but I would like to know like what kind of topics our viewers would like to hear.
Right.
You know, what kind of things, like what do they enjoy about Cringe Musume as a channel? And also like what kind of things would they want to see more of, or like what kind of stories would they like to hear? When we cover the stuff from these three J-vloggers, you're going to see that they cover topics that we haven't yet. And that's part of the reason why Duck wanted to do this video in particular.
Of course, right? Because we have other videos lined up, but
Right.
man,
But
like,
you
we
wanted,
wanted to, we wanted to try this, and you wanted to talk about Chase and other guys too. So
right.
again, at the same time, like for the viewers, if you guys want some topic, just like other subscribers, comment down. It's not like we're gonna be like, nah, man.
Right. I mean, we reserve the right to do it or not. You know, if you ask for something super wild, you know, we might not be able to accommodate your request. But we're really interested in knowing, for sure. Yeah.
But one thing about Chase's video, he talks about working in Japan for so long, and when you get back home after 30 years of living in Japan, it's hard to get a job, man.
Right.
I mean, in my case, since I've made my LinkedIn account, because the stuff I was doing in Japan, most of the stuff on my resume is Japan something.
Right.
So
Right.
all these companies contacting me, they're Japanese companies or American companies in Japan.
Right.
But here, nah. They're like, this dude, like, he been doing stuff in Japan. Probably he'll fit in Japan more. And all the recruiters, they don't even contact me.
So I see.
And
Well,
of
the time
course,
you spent in Japan.
And of course, speaking Japanese is a big plus too. Because
Right.
a lot of people, surprisingly, in Japan, and I'm not talking about the English teachers, but in the work IT or entertainment business, they have gaijins who's working in those industries, but with very limited Japanese.
Right.
So they're like, oh, if you speak English and Japanese, and because of K-pop, if you speak Korean too,
Right. Well, I mean, you're a unicorn at that point. You speak all those languages, have that amount of experience.
I didn't make it. But talking about the English teachers, man, like most gaijins I've met in Japan, they were English teachers.
Okay.
And I mean, some of them, they're like fresh. They're like, oh, I just got to Japan, man. Like, I'm enjoying my life. And some dudes, just like Chase, been in Japan for like 20 years, 30 years, something like that, like for a good amount of time. And because what I was doing in Japan, most English teachers I met them at clubs, bars, or some kind of nightlife establishments, right?
Right.
So they've been there for like how long? For a long time. And what they told me was they've been there for so long, they don't have anything back home anymore.
Yeah.
Some not even a family. So
Chase mentioned that. He's from New York originally. He said, you know, he goes back to New York. It's not even really, doesn't feel like home anymore. Like all the people he knew have moved on to somewhere else.
Probably Jersey.
You know, it's just very different. And I remember talking to an English teacher. He was from the UK, and he lived in my neighborhood. And he was the other Gaijin. It wasn't like now where like even some of their videos, man, I see other foreigners walking in the background. Like Japan was not like that when I lived there. It's wild. Like you just see Westerners just walking around. Like, yeah, it wasn't like that. Like it was kind of when I was there. And I mean, again, this was a while back because this was what? Between 2008 and 2012, those 4 years. You know, if I saw another Westerner, sometimes it was like, what's up? yeah. Like it was like, sometimes you get Westerners, they'll see you and try not to look at you.
Right.
Those are the ones they don't want to associate themselves with other Westerners. Yeah. But this guy, you know, I kept seeing him. And, you know, he noticed me too. And so one day we were at the same konbini, that famima in front of the apartment, the classic. We visited like a million times a day because it was right across the street. And he was buying. We were buying the same stuff. We were buying alcohol, dude. And it was like nighttime. He had just come back from the train station. He got off work. You know, I finished my chapter, and you know, I was like, okay, like I'm just gonna
time to party,
drink and watch a movie or something. Yeah. And I go in there, and so we both had our bags with like a little snack and some cans of Chuhai. That's beers. What I had. He had beers, and so, you know, we kind of bumped into each other and it was like, oh, it's the other Gaijin in the neighborhood. So it was like, hey, you know, and for the most part, Gaijin, the first time they talk in English, even if it's not their own language, because that's just the language for Gaijin. And, but he was British. And then, you know, so we just started talking. He's like, oh, okay. He's like, you're American. I'm like, yeah. So we started, I just started asking him, like, he's like, how long have you been here? And I at that point, I'd been there about 1.5 years. And, you know, and he'd been there 10 years. So I was like, whoa, you know, and he's like, how do you like it here? And I'm like, you know, it's cool. And, you know, I told him, I'm like, he's like, what do you do? I said, I draw manga. He's like, really? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, that's crazy.
Yeah, right.
He's like, is that normal? Like, I've never heard of a foreigner doing that. I'm like, no, it's just me. And he's like, wow. He's like, how is that? And I told him, like, I told him it's stressful as hell. Like, the deadlines are crazy. I'm always drawing. I don't really have time for much else. You know, and I just finished my chapter though. And he's like, all right. He's like, you want to go to the park? There's that little park, like 2 blocks down.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, yeah, let's go. So we went over to the park and we sat on a bench and just started drinking. And we just started talking about all sorts of stuff. Like back then, I think it sounds from these videos that we were watching that it's pretty different now. How the foreigner interaction in Japan, because there's just way more. So there's groups. I heard one of these J vloggers was like, I don't like going to Shibuya because there's too many Westerners.
Right.
He's like, I want to experience Japan. Shibuya is already shot. It's just a bunch of just
then you
West
Gaijin
going wild. Right. What's that? Yeah. So, you know, he said, you know, yeah, I've been here 10 years and like we just. Right. What I meant to say is like, I noticed when I met foreigners and we started talking, then it was like, like you just like give your own experience. Like, this is what I'm feeling. What are you feeling? Yeah. So it was like that. And he was an English teacher. And he said, you know, I've been here 10 years now. And it's like, I don't have anything back in the UK waiting for me. Like at this point, what is my resume going to say? I'm an English teacher, but in Japan, you don't need certification if you're a native speaker. But if you're going to teach English in an English-speaking country,
a bachelor's degree.
A bachelor's degree, right? But if you're going to be an English teacher,
for JET is bachelor's degree, but Ekimae Ryugaku probably not.
Well, if you're going to be an English teacher in an English-speaking country, you're going to need an English something like professor, teacher, professor of English or whatever, which is not the same as getting a bachelor degree where you learn a lot of different things and. You know, you just graduated from college, and you're an English speaker. So he's like, I can't teach English, you know, literature and whatever, you know. And the other thing that he told me, which it seems like it's different now, is that when he started working as an English teacher, he was making really good money and relatively a short amount of time a week working. He would work a couple hours, a couple days. He had a lot of free time, expendable income, and time flew really quickly for him, is what he told me. He's like, you just kind of, he'd go out and drink and go out and party and, meet people. And he's like, and I asked it, but he didn't speak Japanese.
Right.
And one of the things that also people need to realize if they think, okay, like teaching English is my way into Japan. We said earlier, like you want to learn Japanese because that's how you're really going to be able to communicate with people and, build friendships and relationships and understand what's going on around you.
Right.
Japanese English schools would prefer that you don't speak Japanese.
Right.
If you're an English teacher, they just want, if you don't speak a lick of Japanese, that's even better for them. They want you to be like that.
Yeah. That's
and they would dissuade you from learning Japanese almost. Like they don't want you speaking to the students in Japanese.
Yeah. That's so. And English teachers like that caused many, many, many problems in the past.
Because they spoke Japanese?
Yeah. And they went out with girls, their students and stuff.
So, right.
And so on.
Well, right. But so to be fair, you don't need to speak Japanese to go out with your students.
But just a little bit.
Choose to
just
do
a
that.
little bit is just like, yeah, kakkoi.
Right.
I like you more.
Well, and the reason I'm mentioning that is this particular English teacher really didn't speak Japanese at all. And I was surprised. And he was surprised that I did. And he's like, you've only been here a year and a half. And I explained to him I learned at the karaoke in LA and all that stuff. And he was like, wow, still. He's like, that's crazy.
Right.
But he's had relationships and girlfriends all those 10 years without speaking. And he had a girlfriend at the time. And I asked him, I'm like, how does that work? Does she speak English? He's like, not a word. And I'm thinking, yo, you're Japanese. Like, what? How does that work? Well, I mean, like I said before, there's people in Japan who are very quiet. And also some Japanese people aren't the most communicative. You know what I mean? Like, it depends on the person. Some people are chatterboxes. They'll talk your ear off. And then other people are just very quiet and they don't tell you much about themselves. So somehow, this relationship worked. I asked him and he said like, yeah, we just kind of go out and do stuff. They make small talk, but I thought that was wild. I'm like, I couldn't do that.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of those English teachers I met in Roppongi or Shibuya or at the clubs,
right?
Pretty much the same. Same story, what they're going through, same thing. And like most of these guys, the longer they were in Tokyo, the more they were lost. Again, same thing. Same deal.
Well, yeah.
They're like, I don't have a home to go back. I mean, what am I going to do there? Teach English in an English-speaking country?
Right.
So they're like, what am I going to do? I've been doing this for the last 18 years or something like that.
You get trapped.
Yeah. I mean, all they got left was just going out to clubs or bars, drinking, messing around with girls. Most of the time, gaijin hunters. They're like the match made in heaven too. So
yeah, but it's just a cycle. It's just
and repeat every single day. So every time I perform, let's say, because I've been performing like how many times a week? 2 or 3 days a week, like on the weekend, right? Let's say like Friday, I have a show in Roppongi. Meet these guys and like, somebody, hey, what's up? Like, let's say his name is Jake. What up, Jake? Like drink. Next day, like I have a show at Shibuya. And of course, I tell him I have a show in Shibuya. You want to come? And he will bring his English teacher friends and all this stuff. Like, so you see them like constantly. Like I'm there to perform, but to them, it's like, we have something to do tomorrow night. Right.
Yeah.
And I know this dude who's performing there. We're not just a guest, like regular guest. Now we know somebody. We know an insider. Not that much of an insider or help, but it's a reason for them to come by. But
of course,
again, I'm not trying to shit on all these English teachers. If they genuinely love teaching English in Japan, sumimasen. But if you genuinely love teaching English in Japan, I'm happy for you. Good for y'all. But again, like meeting all these dudes, my first time meeting these guys. Because a lot of these dudes, they do music as a hobby, or they do something else as a hobby because, they have all this time. Back then. Now, not much. Now they slave drive you, man. Right.
Now, it's very different. He said, like, the part of the reason he didn't go back not to cut you off, but real quick, because that's a point that he made too. Is he said the money was too good. I'm not doing. I'm just talking to someone, and I'm covering all my bills and everything very easily, and then I have expendable income. But what do they do with that expendable income? Just kill their liver and their kidneys, dude. Like because that's
So again, same thing, man. Like again, I mentioned about LinkedIn, or they have they have some other websites for GaijinPot.com.
That's what it's called?
Yeah,
Gaijin Pot?
Yeah, Gaijin Pot. Not that pot, but Gaijin Pot, the actual pot.
Is it nabe?
Nabe. And they have jobs in Japan. I mean, they have a few other sites for Gaijins to look for jobs in Japan. You go in, most jobs I see is nowadays many IT jobs, but you need a degree. You need to go to school for that, right?
Right.
But most jobs for Gaijins, English teacher, 英語先生, 英会話. And they have how much they pay. They list how much they pay. And it's like, pay is the same. Maybe less now. Right. Let's say the most I heard was getting 35만 or close to 40만 or something like that. Because he was doing all these other side jobs.
That's a month?
Yeah.
So what does that translate into dollars?
Let's say just $3,000 or like $4,000 max. Now because they try to hire kids straight out of college, they pay like 25만 or something like that.
Right.
You can't survive like that as a Gaijin living in Tokyo. Right.
Yeah.
Because like half of that is already rent. And you get Gaijin taxed, so that too.
Right.
So I don't know, man.
Gaijin taxed.
Gaijin taxed. Not the menu with different prices, but actual taxes, man.
Right. Yeah.
Gaijin's like what? Altogether is 30 something, right? I don't know.
I don't even.
I was looking at it like a few years back, so I'm not sure. Probably
30%
more
of your gross income.
Yeah.
It's not above Japanese tax.
No.
Okay. All right.
But they have some. I don't know. I need to take a look at it again because I was taking a look at it when I was like, oh my god, made it to the final interview. So I was like, okay, now let's look at tax.
Right. You're like, let's look at the logistics of this thing.
Then I didn't get the job, so I was like, this. Take a look at it. But yeah, I remember meeting those English teachers. My first show in Roppongi. And talking to those Gaijins, and I remember thinking, I'm sorry by the way, but I thought, this music stuff better work out, otherwise this is my future. That's why even though I see all these English teacher jobs, a lot of people use English teaching jobs just to get into Japan, get a visa and get to Japan, get their foot in first, right? But me, that was never the option for me.
Right.
I'm like, I'm not gonna do this English teaching thing. And back then they preferred Gaijin looking dudes first anyways. So that wasn't even an option for me. But yeah, like watching Chase Senpai's video. This PTSDs, man, just coming back to me. I'm like,
Oh yeah, no, I felt that too.
Yeah,
I felt that too. I guess maybe that's part of the reason why I never really wanted to watch.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Foreigners living in Japan.
Yeah, 100%.
Talking about their experiences. Just I was trying to, I mean, that's the cool thing about Cringe Musume is that we get to talk about these things, and in a way, I'm like working through my Japanese, my Japan PTSD. Like we talk about it, we try to be, entertaining about the topics we address and stuff.
Be positive about our experience.
Yeah, I mean, well, you got to be positive no matter what. But definitely listening to some of these guys, they're not being positive, and they're going. I mean, is this the segue? Do we have like some closing remarks on Chase the Traveler, or
yeah, let's do it right now. So everybody, go watch Chase. I'll put a link here.
All right.
Chase the Traveler.
Chase the
Good
Traveler.
channel to watch.
Definitely.
Go
And
watch
Chase
it
the Traveler
now.
was definitely my favorite J
Oh, me
vlogger
too, me
to
too.
listen to for sure.
Real
So yo,
senpai stuff. Real simple.
if Chase the Traveler ever sees this, yo, big ups.
Leave a comment.
Awesome videos. Leave a comment if you see this.
By the way, like his recent video, it was like, probably he's back in New York or something like that. So he was like panning the camera. It's like, this is where I grew up, and it was projects. I'm like, back,
You know where?
Back. in Manhattan somewhere. I'm like, back.
Oh, okay. I didn't know there were projects in Manhattan. I just thought Manhattan was like Seinfeld, dude.
Friends,
Yeah,
Seinfeld.
like
Of
right,
course, like,
right.
the Avengers and everything. But yeah, like watching those red brick apartments, I'm like, oh no, I'm fine, man.